Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I am the Pervasive Media Studio community lead. I'm a white man in my late 30s with long hair and a beard. I'm wearing a dark purple kind of checked shirt thing. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put their hand up? Oh, just one of you. Hi. Welcome. So for you, what is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, the University of the West of England, the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And what we do is we offer studio space, desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make time for collaboration. Now, quick bit of housekeeping. Please do feel free to move around, make a cup of tea, get a glass of water or anything from the kitchen. Please don't use the microwave, it interferes with the induction loop, but other than that, go wild. We have a quiet space just to the left through here. So if you need to take a break at any point, just hop on in there. There are fire exits at either end of the studio on the other side. If you hear a fire alarm, that is real. So if that goes off, one of the studio team will direct you in that direction. And there are accessible toilets and baby change. I don't see any babies, but just in case, in the corridor over there next to the kitchen. There will be a Q&A at the end of the talk. Those of you who are watching online, you can just pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Danielle will pull them out. If you're in the building, you can stick your hand in the air in the old-fashioned way. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at PM Studio UK on Twitter, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Today, we've got some surveys for you to fill out. If you're in the space, there are some QR codes dotted around. We've put up some posters, or you can ask Danielle for a paper copy. If you're online, we'll drop the URL into the chat. These help us think about future talks and also to make the case to funders for the work that we're doing. So please, if you can, fill them out. Our speaker for today is Lucy Telling, a longtime studio resident as part of Stand and Stare, which is a company that creates interactive installations, exhibitions, and performances. And today she's going to be talking about their work with Holocaust memorial sites and the challenges and sensitivities of exploring perpetrator heritage. Obviously, this touches on some quite difficult topics, so I'll remind everyone that if you need to make use of the quiet space or just step away, we totally understand. Do what you need to do. That said, I'm going to hope you'll give me a warm welcome for Lucy.
Thanks. Thanks, Martin, and thanks everyone for coming along today and online. Yes, so thanks for the introduction there. Our company, Stand and Stare, I suppose it's about telling stories and connecting people, and we generally do that through something tangible combined with something digital that allows people to immerse themselves in those stories. So usually there's a physical installation or an exhibition or a book you flick through or an object that tells a story. The project that I want to talk to you all about today, Houses of Darkness, for that we've created sort of a bit of a departure in a way for us. There isn't an obvious kind of physical thing in the same way as with lots of our projects. So for this, we've collaborated on creating the website for the project, and then within that, this chatbot facility. So that's what I kind of want to talk through today. And so in order to do that, I feel like I need to paint the wider picture of the project, because there's quite a lot of different elements to it. And that's kind of then why we've got a chatbot. So why did we come to that? So we'll talk a little bit about that and the sort of, I suppose, the unique challenges of this kind of project and this particular part of the Holocaust heritage in terms of talking about perpetrator heritage, which has, you know, its own sensitivity and unique challenges for us and for the project as a whole. I guess the other thing that I wanted to just mention right at the top was just in terms of the chatbot, what kind of chatbot we're talking about. So if you've come hoping to gain insights like into the recent advancements with chatbots like chatbot GPT, and I'm really sorry, but this isn't that. So this is conversational, pre-written, clickbot or rule-based chatbot. So if that's what you're after, I'm really, really sorry, but I'm not going to be able to offer very much there. But I do think, am I right in saying that there is an AI talk next week? I'm not sure exactly.
Yes, there is.
So, you know, come along next week as well. But yes, so Houses of Darkness. So this project was conceived by, and it's a collaboration mainly between 3 Holocaust memorial sites across Europe. So all of these 3, so we've got Falstad in Norway, Bergen-Belsen in Germany, and Westerbork in the Netherlands. So they were all, they're all former campsites, so they were all part of the Nazi camp system. So they're all set up as memorials to the victims of the Holocaust, and it was those three sites, and then a production company from the Netherlands called Paradox. So they're kind of key partners that we worked with. So I'm just going to kind of, I haven't got slides and such. I've just got some notes, and I'm going to navigate through the website for you, so you can kind of just get a gauge of what that's all about. So I'll just click on there. And I mean, there's just a bit more about the project. I'm sure you're not going to be able to read all that now, but it's there, so you know that's there for later. So yes, so the idea behind it was to explore an aspect of these memorial sites' heritage, which has been, you know, somewhat overlooked. So I was at Bergen-Belsen the week before last to launch the website, and also the final art exhibition. So I was there with Bas Kortold, who's from Westerbork, and he told a story about the kind of origin of where the idea came from for the project. And he was on a tour of another memorial site, and they looked around the whole place, and then towards the end there was a building, and he said to the tour guide, he said, "What's that building over there then?" And the guy said, "Well, that was the commandant's house, but you can't go in there. There's we haven't really had time to do anything with that." And it just kind of really struck him that there was this huge part of the heritage of these sites that was, you know, overlooked or avoided because it's such a sensitive, difficult area to talk about. And so he got together with some of these other sites across Europe and began to have these conversations about creating a project that particularly looked at that heritage and the heritage of those spaces, those perpetrator spaces that are all within these memorial camps. So the commandants' houses where they lived, or those kind of buildings that hadn't been looked at so much. So, I mean, I suppose like the memorial sites, they're set up for the victims, and so, you know, it's paramount for them to respect those voices and and so the concern, which is often brought up, is that that if you give attention to the perpetrators, then you're taking that away from the victims. So so that's partly where this has come from, as a way for them as memorial sites to try to begin to have those conversations, you know, in very careful ways. So I'll just go back to the home page, and I'm just just show you, so here are 3 images. So in these images you can see some of the former perpetrators from the 3 camps in the commander's house, which is there at Westerbork, which is in the background of that image there. So that kind of, I suppose they have been, particularly these three sites have been thinking about the need to communicate this wider historical picture and try to unpack some of those complexities behind that. So, you know, how and why did these people become perpetrators, and what does actually perpetratorship mean? So in some of the conversation within the chat, we look at the role of bystanders through Bergen-Belsen, and, you know, thinking about who supported the camp system, so who lived nearby and who provided things for the camps, and also about women's roles within that camp system, whether they were guards or whether they were the wives of the commandants, or those. So the complexities of what that actually means is something that we're trying to sort of explore and unpack through the project. And I suppose, like, part of that, like, it's about, so the focus of this has been particularly, the target audience is particularly young people, for whom, of course, the Holocaust, you know, it's further and further away. So for me, my grandparents were in World War II, and I talked to them about that. I mean, I know one person who's 97, who was a child at that time, but, you know, that era is further and further away, and it becomes more and more distant for people, and so, you know, part of the focus of this was with war happening here, you know, in Europe, it being more important than ever to examine the history of war crimes during World War II, but also to address things that are happening now, and to think about the dangers of extremist ideologies, and obviously the terrible consequences that can happen when those things are left unchecked. So there's some really big themes underneath all of this, and the way that they wanted to approach this was essentially the 2 things were for young people and also through art. So Paradox, this production company from the Netherlands, were brought in artist teams who've then created art exhibitions in each of the 3 memorial camps. So I just wanted to briefly tell you about these, but I won't go into lots of depth because, well, I could talk all day about each one probably. This first one here for Bergen-Belsen, that launched a couple of weeks ago, and that includes quite a lot of video content, mostly video content, in fact, and then this one in the middle for Falstad also, there's video content, and so those 2, a lot of that is available online through the website here. So there are linked pages here. There is some content within these that you know, it comes with a warning, so explore, but I won't kind of I won't show you very much of that today. I'll just show you the main pages for that. So this work is by Jakob Ganselmeer in collaboration with Ronjas Landveld and Anna Ziebelnik, and Jakob, who interestingly, so he grew up next to Dachau, and he also then worked on the exhibition here for Falstad. And that one there, so he's so that's him, and then there's a writer called Simon Stranger who also has 2 pieces of writing. So I'll leave you to peruse those at your own leisure. But I'll just show you the last one as well, though, because so the final exhibition, which is at Westerbork, this is by Youngsma and O'Neill, and they've created an online documentary which is available on Instagram, and I'll just see if I can show you just here, because it's just really beautifully curated. It's really, really beautifully done. So that, have a look at that and the others if you get a chance. So I suppose, like, our challenge with this project from our point of view was that, so with the exhibitions we have, there are also art workshops and summer schools being they've been run through all of the memorial camps, and so the focus is to really sort of talk about these subjects in real depth and think about the themes at the heart of the art exhibitions. And so our challenge was to try to create a platform which would support those visitors to find out more in terms of the historical references, but also to really continue their questioning. So the idea was to really try and get people to come away with raising questions, and so offering provocations and really thinking in depth about these things. And so, yeah, it was kind of, I'd just like to talk a bit about the kind of process of going through that. So I suppose to begin with, when we were approached, we did so with some trepidation. I mean, you know, in this country, in the UK, we don't have that perpetrator heritage. We don't have that perpetrator memory in the same way that people do within Europe. So it's a very sensitive subject. And I'm not a Holocaust scholar. So there was a sense of trepidation with that. But we'd been invited in 2018. We went to Bergen-Belsen and to Neuengamme, which is another memorial camp in Germany. And we were part of a workshop there called Memoryscapes. And so for that, we worked with a big cohort of people from around Europe, looking at immersive techniques that could be used within those campsites. And so I suppose from that, we knew that we would be really well supported. We'd already worked with somebody through Westerbork and somebody through Bergen-Belsen, so it felt like that was, we knew we'd have a good team with us. And also we sort of, through that, we developed a few R&D projects. And so this kind of came out of the back of one of those. So one of those projects was using image recognition, which was similar to a project of ours called Mayfly. So we'd kind of used that as an example project there in order to basically get people to reflect in a kind of deeper way when they went to those sites. And so our initial proposal for this kind of came out of that, basically. So the idea behind that was that we would have a set of creative activities that would kind of give you a chance to reflect in a different way. So you might kind of, I suppose, have a different perspective and a bit of time out where you kind of think deeply and do an artistic activity or a creative activity. So that was sort of still there bubbling in the background, I suppose, and that comes up later with this project too. So as the project grew, originally it was going to be a set of still photographs in each of the settings of the houses. That then developed much more into the artists then came up with all sorts of different things that they wanted to do, and so our work then needed to correspondingly kind of develop alongside that. So we gradually came up with this idea for a chatbot, basically. So we've called it Let's Discuss, which you can sort of just about see behind there. I'll just scroll down to there. So yes, so why a chatbot? So as I've mentioned before, we were targeting a young audience. So the messenger format is quite familiar to all of us, and obviously to young people as well. So that was one thought, and we knew that it was a really challenging and sensitive subject that would require some very deep thought. And so I suppose what we were thinking is that if you went to see one of these exhibitions, there are lots and lots of questions that would be raised in your mind. And the best thing that you could do afterwards would be to have a conversation, ideally with one of the experts from the memorial camps or one of the artists. But obviously that's not always going to be possible. So the next best thing, in a way, we thought would be to have that conversation digitally. I'll just click here, and so you can go into them. We've got a kind of onboarding screen at the beginning of the chat. And these are just some of those key kind of overarching themes within it. So is it right to give any attention to the perpetrators of the Holocaust? Is it helpful to try to understand what makes a perpetrator? So then we're hopefully trying to answer these questions through the chatbot. So I suppose the other key reason for a chatbot was that we wanted to be able to provide access to more information about the themes within the project and through the artists, but to present someone with lots and lots of interpretation can be really overwhelming, especially if you've just been to see an exhibition that you've got lots to take on board as well. And so we felt that if you were to then be able to deliver that through a series of questions and references through a conversation, then that becomes much more digestible. So we've got historical references within there and background reading, which you can choose to read or not. So it's got that kind of digestible function there. And it also is a way to get the tone. We were being really careful in order to get the tone right. So using this rule-based chatbot where you can carefully script every part of that, we basically know where it's going to go and also then where it's not going to go. So, it then can't be abused or exploited or, used as a platform for hatred or for something that we want to. It's very well moderated, basically, and very well scripted, so that you can't add your own words into that without there being a very kind of clear moderation. Towards the end, there is a way that you can submit something, but that I'll tell you a bit about that. But anyway, let's have a look. So it's just like really simple messenger type format, and so I suppose, like I said before, it's not AI. It's very seemingly simple tree structure. So you've got questions, and then you've got set answers, which you can choose from, and then it branches off into different directions. So we've brought in some ways to personalise it. So as you'll see, she's called Lucy, which, I mean, to start with, it was just like a holding name because I was writing it. But then it just, I mean, it sort of stuck, but it was kind of, we obviously thought quite carefully about that too. We thought, we did consider a unisex name, and in the end we stuck with Lucy basically because because it's quite an English sounding name. We felt that that was safer than it being a name that would relate to one of the other countries, and we were also wanting to be careful that we didn't inadvertently name it the name that of a female perpetrator or something. So we would be, you know, that was partly the reason for that. So yes, so it's ended up being my name. But I'll just click you through a bit. So I'll just show you the very beginning, and you can have a go yourselves. But so you know, there's the simple basic tricks of just of adding your own name in. So let's Lucy it, and then you know, then she'll repeat your name through the chat, so it kind of feels a little bit more personal. But you know, essentially it's a survey format. And actually initially I did write it and tested it in type form, which was really, you know, user-friendly and a great way to test it out. And I mean, we could have even used type form within this, but actually there were just a few things that it didn't enable us to do. So so we designed a bespoke chat through the CMS, well, through our web development company, brilliant company called Fieldwork, who we work with in Manchester. So they did the development for the website and also including the chat. So so I wrote it initially in type form, and then we transferred it over to the CMS for the website, and then we all were able to work into that. So, and then in terms of translations, so it's in 4 languages. So we were all working into that in order to translate the whole site, including the chat. So yes, so like I just, in terms of the challenges, I mean, it, you know, it's not an AI chatbot, and so it doesn't have, it's not based on that, but I don't think it would be fair to say that it was a simple thing to develop either, but that's much less to do with the technical aspects and more to do with the subject matter and incorporating the perspectives of the artists and the camps. So we were working across across these different countries and in 4 different languages. I mean, English was spoken widely throughout the team, but in terms of perspectives, I think that was kind of what was interesting. So it highlighted the differences in their approaches and perspectives of different countries. So we worked on a different process, I suppose, in a way with each camp. So in the Netherlands, they were very, that he provided me with references, and then I went away and wrote something and then came back to him, whereas Falstad wanted to write it mostly themselves. And then, so we've got a kind of a mixture in a way in terms of that process, which then it was my job to try and get the tone to sort of feel consistent enough, but there are some changes within that, which I hope is not too obvious, but it's sort of, yeah, I suppose it was just that balance as well between making it easy to work through, and also keeping it rich and making sure that there's enough background reading and that there's enough for people to go away with. So yeah, as well as working with the memorials, we initially really wanted to include direct references to the artist's work. I mean, I suppose at one point we were thinking that this is a bit like you go to the art exhibition and then afterwards you unpack the exhibition and your thoughts behind it. But you know, there were various kind of practical constraints with that made that quite difficult. So the timeline being one of them, and their capacity to be able to. So I mean, the Birkenbelsen exhibition only opened a couple of weeks ago, so it was very difficult for us to then include direct references to work that hadn't been completed yet. So I suppose. With working with artists as well, their desire to let the work speak for themselves, that we didn't want to kind of critique something, I suppose, through the chatbot. So what we've ended up doing with that is to focus much more on the themes that are within the work, within their work, and within the project as a whole. So in order to unpack your thoughts and feelings about the artworks and the project, but also to give extra insight into from the Holocaust Memorial Site's perspectives. So although saying that the Falstad questions, there are a few direct references because that was the first one that was completed. So at the towards the end of the conversation, the way it goes, you basically get to choose a camp that you've either visited or that you've looked at their work online, and then the structure goes that you then have choices within those campsites of different themes or questions to think about. And then towards the very end of the chat, Lucy offers you a creative activity to try, which is based on the answers that you've given throughout the chat. So that was one of the things that with the type form couldn't quite do, and that we've managed to do in more depth through this CMS version. So she also gives you a response, a creative response that has been in response to one of the other creative activities from somebody else. So you get a kind of dialogue, so there's an exchange. So it helps you to see another person's perspective from another country perhaps, or another visitor to one of these sites. So you can get to, so you get to that at the end of your chat, but you can kind of jump to it through here as well. So there's creative responses, and then these are the creative activities. So yeah, so we've kind of it kind of takes us full circle in some ways. So to the Memoryscapes project that we began with back in 2018, where we were writing similar kind of creative activities to help people to think more deeply about the subject matter or from new perspectives. So the activities, there are 31 of these to choose from, and you can choose to draw or write or take a photo or make a sound recording. And some of them relate really closely to one camp or to one particular theme from a camp, whereas others sort of work across all of them. So in terms of what you're given through the chat, that bears a relationship to which camp you've been talking about and which theme, and also whether you decided you want to draw or write or take a photo. But I'll show you one of them. So influence pie. So this one here, you can see it. The idea with this is that you're making a pie chart of key influences in your life. So in terms of making you reflect, so that they're not necessarily directly relating to the history, they're making you, I suppose, think about your own life and your own place in the world, and how these things can affect you on a bit more of a personal level. So I'll just go back to, and then I can show you one of the examples of what somebody's done with that. So, so then here's an influence pie example. So yes, so this is somebody's pie chart of the things that they feel influence them most. And we've got, we just give each response a kind of brief description, but they're all anonymous. But just having that just helps to give you a context. So, you know, the age of this person and where they are, at what point they're at, and then you can kind of see how that might reflect with the responses that they've given. I mean, it was a key consideration, I suppose, for us from the outset about privacy and moderation. So all of the responses that are given at the end of when you submit a creative activity, they go to one of the camps for moderation before they're put up on the site. So that's the only way that you can add something to the website, essentially. And that's all checked and, you know, double checked before it's put up there, so that nothing can be misconstrued, and that, yeah, that there's nowhere that it can be abused or exploited, basically. I'm kind of whizzing through, really, which is probably not a bad thing, but I would really encourage you to have a go and have a look at the artist's work. But the chat itself, I think, you know, I think you can do it. You could do it without even looking at the artist's work. But I would, you know, very much advise to look through that first, and then have a go at the conversation. It takes only about 5 minutes to go through, well, a bit longer depending on how long you want to spend reading some of the background references that are included. But then the creative activities really vary. You know, some of them you could do in literally a few minutes, and then others you could take a lot longer. But mostly they're designed to be done fairly quickly. But yeah, it'd be great if anybody, you know, is able to have a go and let us know if you've got any thoughts or feedback as well. Yeah, be welcome to answer any questions as well if anyone has anything that they wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. So yeah, we got plenty of time for questions. I have got a microphone here, which is for the people at home, so you won't be able to hear yourself, but they will if you use this. Does anyone have a question? Harriet, get us started.
Yeah, I guess I wondered, have you had any response from users, apart from the entries, from either victims of the Holocaust or the young people? What's the kind of response been so far?
We've only just launched the week before last. So we've done quite a lot of user testing over the last sort of 6 months to a year, and that we've then been able to build into the final design in a way. But yeah, and then we've also had, so through the art workshops, they've now been using the creative activities. So we've got quite a lot of response through those direct links. But yeah, so far, I mean, we haven't got that big, you know, that wider thing quite yet. But yeah, getting there. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah. Jazz. There you go.
Where are you? So with all the creative sort of responses from people, is there a plan to sort of do any research or like analyze some of those outcomes, or are you mainly sharing them with the other people who've participated?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's almost like early days in a way, but the memorial camps themselves certainly will be, you know, analysing what comes through, and also they've got a plan. So in terms of getting it out to certain groups of young people and using it in their education departments within the sites themselves, but they also are really interested to get a broader set of responses, and like you say, like going to survivors or descendants of survivors, and you know, and trying to get people on board as well. So we've got voices within this part, I suppose, that's a bit more diverse rather than literally, yeah, just those groups who are coming to the sites themselves. But yeah, we've got a meeting about that next week. So.
I was just thinking about, you said that we don't in this country have a history of perpetration, and I was just thinking about slavery, and whether, like, and I think that we're not very good at talking about that, and I wondered whether something like this might be useful in order to, like, talk about those things.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, part of the reason why I was so interested in this project is for that story and for that reason, because I totally think that in this country, you're absolutely right, that does feel like, yeah, that story needs to be told more, and that it's a similar thing in a way, isn't it? And I mean, from a personal point of view, when about 10 years ago, I discovered that a distant ancestor of mine was involved in the slave trade, and it was like one of the most shocking things that I've ever dealt with, really. And it was like, yeah, we then did. We've done quite a lot of research into trying to find out more about that and talk about that, and be open about that. And but it's really difficult as well. It's like, yeah.
What you're saying about the people around it, like you were talking about the wives or the security guards, or whatever, the guards or whatever, and I think that obviously plays out when you think about, well, particularly Bristol's history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and and then I suppose just bringing those things up to date as well, in the same way as this project. It's like, this is history and you can see it as history, but actually there's all sorts of, the repercussions of that are still felt, that, I mean, if you look at Jakob's work, there's about white supremacy, and there's, and how that ideology has spread over the internet. And, that's happening now, and it's really important to, to front up to that a bit, and not, especially for a memorial site, it's much easier to go, we want to, this is for the victims and it's really important, but also it's important to confront that and understand the complexities of that, and understand why it is that somebody might lean towards that, and then find ways to prevent that and to understand it. And I think that's sort of what's at the heart of this project, in a way, is to try and think about those difficult things, difficult subjects, but in order to prevent things and to recognise things, before they get bigger, basically. But yeah. But no, I think that's a really, really good point. And actually, Anja Slandveld, who's the artist who's worked with Jakob on the Bergen-Belsen exhibition. Might be something. So he grew up in Suriname, and as a black man, he feels like his fight has been something quite different to the Holocaust, and so his work is very much about is sort of that perspective thing. You know, it's kind of like he was saying that his kind of perspective of the Holocaust is about what he's seen in Hollywood films, which it is for a lot of us, I think. You know, and so him going to Bergen-Belsen for the first time, and then he's written poetry that's then he does a spoken word piece for the exhibition. I mean, I'll let you maybe look at it afterwards, but yeah, I mean, that's another really important point, that it's like, you know, people have their own fights or their own challenges, and then but you know, you can learn from each other, and you know, and that was kind of, yeah, that distance thing, I suppose. It's like, how far do you feel away from the Holocaust? Like, how, you know, how distant does that history feel to you? And why is that? Is it because of your upbringing, or is it because of, you know, whatever else is important to you in your life? But then how can you make that relevant, and how can you make that relevant for young people? And how can you then go, oh yeah, actually, I do need to know about, you know, the tragedy of that, because it can affect us now. So, yeah. Sorry, long answer.
Good answer. Anybody else got a question? There you go.
Have you got plans to expand this anywhere else? Because I was at Auschwitz a few weeks ago, and something like this would have been really good there, and I think there's scope for that, because they did actually point out one of the commanders' houses on the tour, mainly just to highlight how close it was to the camp.
Really?
But I think
that's interesting, because I haven't been to Auschwitz.
Yeah, it's like literally like, here's a wall and then the house is there, and it's a really nice looking house.
Yeah,
So it was quite stark, but it would have been quite powerful, I think, to go in. Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any plans with that.
I mean, I think the wider project, yeah, are having those conversations with other memorial camps. But that is interesting, because I mean, that my experience is limited in a way to these, and I've only been there and to Neuengamme, but yeah, I do think that that's something that has been, you know, sort of pushed to one side for these reasons, really. But yeah, we'll be, yeah, obviously talking to the camps about the whole network. I mean, the network, you know, across the entire Europe. So yeah.
Anybody else? Nothing online? Oh, okay. I wanted to ask a little question, actually, about sort of the duty of care to people, because I think when you're in a museum environment or a memorial environment, you can sort of
buzzing. I'll just stop it from buzzing.
You have a sense that, you know, the person is there. You can shape their environment to the needs of the material that they're facing. Whereas when something is online, when they're just doing it on their phone and they might be on the bus or whatever, how do you feel about the care you need to show someone who might be thinking through some difficult things, and how can you work towards making sure that happens in a safe environment?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really talk for the artworks because I haven't created any of this, but there is some really hard-hitting stuff, and it is available online. So, yeah, I mean, we've got pages of contacts of places that you can go, obviously through the website, where you can speak to somebody, and you know, and there are other details in other websites and things that you can link up to. But I suppose in terms of writing the chatbot itself, yeah, we have really had that in mind, you know, and I hope that the chat itself you know, it sets things up enough and helps people through that, through the conversation itself, and that, you know, there are then places where it will link you out to the contact page and say, you know, if you're affected by this, then please contact these people. But it's true. I mean, you haven't got somebody. It's always better to have a real person there, isn't it? I mean, you know, that's what we're trying to emulate. But actually, that's a hard thing. But the young people who are coming through the sites in groups, and you know, they will be very well supported, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any advice in terms of anything else we could do? It's kind of like, yeah, we've got, you know, thank you messages at the end, and please make contact with these people if you've been affected. And so, I mean, yeah, those links are there if you need them. But yeah.
Thank you. Any last questions from anyone?
I just have one more.
Do it, Tom.
Maybe I missed it at the beginning, but what's your relationship to the artists? Did you put the website together and then ask these artists for their work, or?
No, so we didn't commission the artists. That was done, but through the 3 memorial sites, and there's a production company called Paradox in the Netherlands who've worked with the artists really closely. They've basically put the artist websites together. So these are like separate URLs that we just link to from the main site.
Okay.
So our role has basically been putting together the main site and the chatbot that's within that, and the creative activities and that side of it. But we've had, you know, it's quite an extensive project. There's like work package 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and lots of teams working on different aspects of it. So in terms of summer schools and art workshops, and then the artists working on these. So yeah.
Because I think that those artists making that work, it does tie in with what you're talking about, like duty of care, because it looks like they're talking more from a more personal perspective, and I think that, I don't know, somehow aids that.
Yes, yeah, you know, yeah, it's from their perspective as artists. So, so the Jongsma and O'Neill piece, she grew up near Westerbork, and then she found out that her great-grandfather was a Nazi perpetrator, and so it's a, you know, it's her story, her personal story of that. But they decided to do that through Instagram because they felt that that was a really direct way to get to the target audience, essentially. So, yeah, I think they've done a really beautiful job with that too.
All right. Any last, or I think we might just call it there. So thank you very much, Lucy.
Thanks.
Perspective, so, you know, help us keep these talks free. If you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. Studio team, wave your hands. There we are. We'll be happy to help. If you're watching online, you can drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk. Any questions? Thank you all for being here today. We'll see you again next week.